These paintings were created by children in a classroom at Karralup Native Settlement from 1945 to 1950. I am Brian Yaron, a Noongar girl. My upbringing was full of stories about Karralup, told by my Nana Edith, as she was one of the students of those years. Talking about the paintings of the Noongar children is her comfort and pride that emerged from a painful past of the stolen generations. What has amazed me is how those children could draw such masterpieces about the landscape. Where do those talents come from, especially when they lived in a remote place with harsh conditions? These paintings intrigued me so much that I started a journey to look for an answer.
Karralup Arts is a small group of drawings that were created in the late 1940s at a native settlement in the Great Southern region south of Perth. We have a collection here at Curtin that was transferred here from the United States, where it was found after nearly 60 years of being lost at Colgate University, New York. And the artworks are all principally drawings on paper and mostly landscape drawings. The way they look has become known as the Karralup style and has influenced a lot of other, particularly Noongar Aboriginal artists since the 1950s. Noongar art before this Karralup style doesn't really exist in this form. There's no precedent for Aboriginal landscape paintings.
If landscape painting was not a traditional art of Noongar people, I wonder where Karralup children had the idea of drawing such sophisticated landscapes. Would the teaching of Mr. Noel White be the answer for the children's capacity to draw? Or was it possible that the teachers Mr. and Mrs. White helped the children to create those artworks?
My father was not an artist. He was just a school teacher. He took the whole class out into the bush, and he used to say to them, "We'll just roam around here, and it's only a small bush, and you can tell me what you see here." So off they'd all go, the boys and the girls, and they'd just be taking their time, strolling along through the bush. And then my dad said, "Well, when you get back to the classroom, I want you to draw what you saw." And so he didn't know what to expect from them, but to his amazement, they drew these beautiful scenes and animals, all in great proportion, tremendous proportion. And he was amazed at this. And this is how it all started.
Because Mr. White wasn't a painter himself, and he thought he had a bit of talent here with the boys, he'll try it out. He took some of them down to Albany, and the paintings as well. These people that he showed the paintings to, they didn't believe that the boys had done it, but they did. And they said no, so he did a second trip and took the boys that done the painting, and they did paintings down there in Albany.
We know that they weren't really taught how to draw, how to make pictures. I think it evolved from them looking at images in books that were in the classroom, because it was just a normal classroom like any other classroom. They had books, they had encyclopedias, there would have been images of landscape paintings, of British landscape painters, perhaps some 19th century Australian landscape painters. So they found images for some reference. We don't know what those images were. We're trying to find out exactly what books were in the classroom at that time.
With the Aboriginal children, it came naturally to them. They were never taught. They never were shown any books or anything. It was in them. It was just in their style.
There has been an opinion that the famous Noongar artist Bella Kelly might have had some influence on the child artists at Karralup, as her two sons lived at Karralup at the same time. Would it be the case that she came to teach the boys?
I always wondered whether old Auntie Bella was older than those boys, Because I always thought, and I never really said it to anybody, but I've asked a few youngers around, and a lot of them think, yeah, it could be right, that she might be the mother of the Carolup style. I think that she was older than those boys, you see, Uncle Ren and all them. And she is already painting on her individually, you know. So I got an idea that maybe they saw some of her work. And she could well be that, you know, she could be well the mother of Carolup.
She had several children. Now there was at least two children of the Kelly family who were in class at Carolup. But Bella Kelly never painted, never showed them anything. She never even came to Carolup. Her children may have seen her painting and got an idea from that. That's quite possible. But we don't know for sure. But when my dad took over, there was nothing like that available. Bella Kelly, we'd never heard of her. And so we had no idea that she was around as an artist.
Those kids, even if they weren't direct family members, would have had an opportunity to observe Bella Kelly, who was already drawing at that stage, drawing as she did around the campfire, because many of those family groups camped together over the years. And so I believe that those young kids would have had the chance to observe Bella Kelly doing her depictions of the landscape, and that they remembered that and took that knowledge and that observation into the classroom with them.
The story I get told by Aboriginal people was that Auntie Bella always showed the kids how to do drawing, and not painting, because she never had paints, drawings. And I believe that was where a lot of the boys at Carolup had seen Bella do work. So it wasn't why they did work, but when the idea and the materials were given to them, they had an idea what a painting and a landscape drawing should look like. It didn't just come out of the bolt, out of the blue, like so many books say. Certainly known Bella because very few other Aboriginal young people of her age at that time were drawing in any form. She was. And that's why I say I think maybe she influenced the Carolup work, particularly when you see what came back from America and you see the starkness and naivety of the colouring, particularly night landscapes, black and white. Where would those children have got that idea from?
I personally don't think that Bella Kelly herself as an artist influenced any of the children. And I've seen drawings that were done in the school in the early 1940s with other teachers, and none of those drawings look anything like these drawings that we call Carolup drawings, which started, the first ones were drawn in June 1946. So if Bella's influence on this style was through her children, there's no doubt they would have seen her mother's art and had seen her mother drawing, but the age that the children were when they went to Carolup just doesn't make sense to me that everyone in the classroom learnt how to draw like Bella from her very young children. There's a difference between these stylised works, often, and you can see it in Bella's work, there's works where she's imagining landscapes and longing for places, as opposed to these just almost documentation of what's sitting there in front of her.
There are some distinct similarities, and one of these is the way the composition of the artworks, and the use of the tree as a very kind of stabilising and balancing element within the composition. So, I mean, Bella Kelly's images are very well known for often having two very strong straight tree trunks framing the view through the Stirling Ranges. And you can see that similarity in many of the Carolup artworks. And another sort of aspect of that is that use of sort of Western perspective when it comes to actually making a composition. So using a fence line or a creek or a track to take the viewer's eye through to the back of the bit of paper to give it a sense of perspective. So those sort of elements are sort of similar in Bella's paintings and in the drawings of Carolup.
I'm not sure whether she as an individual had influence over all of the artists. There seemed to be a a competitive nature in the artists that I once heard in an interview by Milton Jackson, one of the last living artists that had come from Carrolup. And he talked about, you know, the kids being very competitive. So it was who could paint the best tree, or who could paint the best sunset, the best yonga or kangaroo. So I think this competitive nature in terms of the art and what the art represented to the eye was more a driving force than any one individual. So it was learning off each other.
There are some contradictory opinions about the connection between Bella Kelly and Carrolup artworks. Even if it's true that Bella Kelly could have indirectly influenced Carrolup art styles through her sons, it still cannot be explained that almost all students in the class possess the talent. Why could they all draw beautiful paintings? There must be another reason.
We surmised that the children felt very attached to their surroundings, to the country they were living in. It seemed that the children had great visual acuity, like they could see something and then just their sense of knowing of what the landscape was and what different trees were and how different animals behaved and, you know, their habits and whatever were it. And that's the same bush that they're in, day out. So they know the trees, they know the fences, they know the contours of the landscape, so they know it very well. But when they're out there, they're refreshing their, you know, the detail. So some of the works become very detailed.
It works well for us as landscape painters because, you know, our culture is land-based. Our spirituality is land-based and, you know, associated with animals and the totemic systems that we have.
It's hard to define an answer to your question at where the ability merges from, but it merges from obviously our culture and merges from our will to survive, and it merges from, you know, a free mind, not a mind that's been censored by an education system that tells you how to express a subject matter along the lines of an institution and how it wants to control your thinking.
When we have a look at the history of Aboriginal people from the 1900s, you know, it's a dark history. But yet when we look at Carrolup and the history there, especially with the child artists, you know, that shines a bright light on this specific site. So I think their mindset in regards to the specific site being out in the bush gave them that connection to culture and to country in a physical and spiritual context. The artworks, they're unique and they disclosed who we are as a people and also as a culture for us as Aboriginal people. You know, even though the past policies try to break our spirits and not acknowledge us, those artworks have rediscovered us, acknowledged us, and empowered our spirits.
Over 60 years have passed. The fragile drawings done with chalk and pastels are still among us. Like their creators, they are resilient. The story of Carrolup's child art talent remains a mystery. People keep discussing many hypotheses, but no one can tell and prove what the exact reason or the secret. However, what we are sure of is that the value of the unique art collection cannot be ignored. And especially for us, descendants of the child artists, the Carrolup paintings have always been a great inspiration.